So, the talks which I've given so far, the first one was, as you know, on the mindfulness. The second one was just on the anapanasati, and taking that deeper into the joy and happiness which come from anapanasati, the piti sukha which comes up naturally. And you don't have to look for that piti sukha. It just comes as a natural result of somebody who's becoming still and peaceful. You're enjoying the meditation. And sometimes people have difficulty finding that or experiencing that joy and happiness which comes in meditation, even with those early stages of breath meditation. Just watching the breath coming in and out, just experiencing piti and sukha. Please know that at this time, you are not just watching the breath so much as watching the joy. That is the most prominent feature of the meditation. When you ask yourself, what am I being aware of? It is of the happiness which is coming up in meditation. And one of the reasons why that is occurring is you're managing to let go of the physical sense, the fifth sense of physical touch, and you're going more towards the mind. And this is something which does occur, as I said, naturally. But because, and please excuse me, in Malaysia, just like in the West, our culture is, well, you may say that you can't cook Western food for me, but Chinese food, Western food, it's pretty much the same. Our cultures have somehow or other kind of coalesced. And one thing which we are afraid of, fear, is sometimes just happiness. Weird. If you're getting peaceful and happy in meditation, many people feel that there must be something wrong. I first experienced that as a young Buddhist and wanting to become ordained as a bhikkhu. Many of my friends in London, when I talked to them and asked them, what's a good place to become a bhikkhu anywhere in the world? And even though there was one or two people who knew about Ajahn, they never told me about him. And later on, after I'd been a monk for many years, I asked them, why didn't you let me know of this great teacher, Ajahn? And they replied, well, you were always smiling and happy. We did not think you were serious. That's what they said. It was as if any spirituality or any religion, you were supposed to be miserable. Otherwise, you were not experiencing dukkha and suffering. Somehow or other, the spiritual paths and happiness were kind of contradictory. But that wasn't the nature of how I was feeling. And then you saw other great monks and nuns who were so light-hearted and happy. And when I saw those were the ones which I wanted to follow. I didn't want to let go and be another misery person. When I saw people being happy, that was a great marketing feature. I'm being gross, but marketing, it made me, I want to be like that too. And that's one of the reasons why you found out that why is it that people celebrate suffering rather than the end of suffering? So it's one of the reasons why many of you are not used to happiness, especially the powerful, deep happinesses which occur in meditation. Once they start to come up, there's a couple of features of that happiness which you need to understand. One of them is you can't control it. You can't possess it. It's beyond you. It's like when you start to vanish, your sense of self starts to disappear, and you let go of things. It's like the happiness of freedom. You all know many stories of people who have been imprisoned for many, many, many years. And when they've been imprisoned in a jail, eventually either their sentence expires or they've been found innocent and they are free to move out of that prison. Many do not want to go. They've got used to incarceration and suffering. And the very idea of freedom is one of the scariest things they've ever faced. So they prefer to stay in jail. Just like human beings, when freedom is put right in front of you, it just takes one step and then you can be free. No, I'm not ready for this. And you find all sorts of excuses to say no. So in order to get into the deep meditations, you have to be courageous. Sometimes, even just when the nimittas start to come up and get strong, sometimes it's helpful that you don't just go straight into a jhana. That's too freaky, too scary. But often, though you have these nimittas come up, the five senses are getting so weak, even almost disappearing, and these beautiful experiences in the mind start to happen. There are mind objects. Doesn't matter what you feel that they can appear like scary or powerful, but what was that I was saying the other day? That sometimes the light which you see in the mind at these days can be so brilliant, you feel you're going to go blind. It's like looking at the sun. The sun over in Malaysia is never as bright as the sun over in Australia. The air is so clear there, and sometimes you can't look at the sun, you will go blind. But experiencing these nimittas is just like that. Like as if with your bare eyes you're just watching the sun for minutes after minutes after minutes. And you have to remind yourself, even though you're perceiving this as a light, it's actually a mental object which you perceive as a light, and it's not dangerous at all. So you can look at it as long as you like, and you never go blind. Or just the intensity of the happiness and the bliss is huge, and it doesn't harm you. And one of the other things to let you know is, well, this is so beautiful, so delightful, won't you get attached? And I did give that answer a few days ago, that anyone who gets really into the bliss of these meditations, yes, you've got to be honest and say you do get attached. But it's an attachment to the realm of the mind. And the only thing, that's a tiny attachment, honestly. And the only things you can expect by being attached to those blisses are the four stages of enlightenment. First stage, second stage, third stage, or fourth stage. So there's a pretty good deal. You don't have to worry about that type of attachment. You're going to be a screamer or once returner, probably a non-returner. So that's what we're supposed to be doing. But however, the fact you can't control it, to many people it's scary. Because each one of you, you've had your difficulties in life, problems in life, which have scared you. And especially if you've got no control of the outcomes. What's happening here is your sense of self is being challenged. That you are the owner, you can direct what you're doing. I love giving talks like this because I like seeing people's reactions. When I say such truths as none of you decided to come here, it wasn't your choice. The proof is you're here. However, you've interpreted it as it was your choice to come here. And if you knew what the truth was, that'd be very, very scary. It's one of the parts of our idea of freedom and liberty, and we can choose what we want to do. Can you? Sometimes, that I've already mentioned the sort of things I got up to when I was at university. One of the things we got up to was we invited a hypnotist to come and demonstrate what hypnosis is. And of course, it was fun at first. Students, 18, 19, 20-year-olds messing around, and many of us volunteered, yes, please hypnotize me. I was not a good hypnotic subject, but there's always one or two students who were easy to hypnotize. And they got them to do stupid things. And we were all laughing. But the funniest and scariest experiment was when they hypnotized one of these students. And then under hypnosis, the hypnotist said, in a few minutes, I'm going to touch, just like you did, my earlobe. When I touch my left earlobe, you, student, are going to stand up. Doesn't matter what is going on, you're going to stand up and you're going to sing the British national anthem in full, in a loud voice. And in those days, students were not that patriotic. The very suggestion of singing the British national anthem was like ridiculous. But nevertheless, the hypnotist took the student out of hypnosis, and I and many others were waiting for him to touch his left earlobe. He was a little bit of an entertainer because he would come close and he moved his finger away just to keep us excited. But then eventually the hypnotist touched his left earlobe, and this student stood up, just like you're sitting down now. He stood up and started singing God Save the Queen in a loud voice, even though everyone else, including me, was howling with laughter. It was the stupidest thing I'd ever seen. Why did he do that in the middle of a lecture? And he wouldn't stop until he completely finished the British national anthem. And many of us, our eyes were hurting with all of the tears coming out. It was ridiculous. But after we finished laughing, the hypnotist asked him, why did you do that? Why did you decide to sing the British national anthem at that time? And he gave a logical answer, a rational answer. It was very clear to us all that he had exercised his free choice, that's what it felt to him, to sing the national anthem. When we all knew he'd been conditioned by the hypnotist to do that. And that's when it got scary. How many of the things which I feel I am doing out of free choice have actually been conditioned into me? And one of the other experiences I had, when I first went to university at Cambridge, it was a posh university. I didn't know many people there at first. And so I just happened to be looking at a TV one day as a student, And there was this advertisement for St. Bruno tobacco. Because in those days, even though I didn't smoke cigarettes, they had people like Albert Einstein would always be smoking a pipe. It was kind of the fashion accessory for professors of theoretical physics to have a pipe. They all had one. So I thought, at least I should try having a pipe and smoking tobacco in a pipe. I never realized even that was bad for your health. But nevertheless, that was what all these big professors were doing. So I saw this advert saying Bruno tobacco, and especially that tobacco was sold because its aroma was supposed to be irresistible to the opposite gender. I remember the advert to this day. This ordinary looking young man was walking down the street, people were leaving him alone, and then he got out a pipe, put the tobacco in and lit it. And then they were like supermodels. They were working in a shop, they jumped over the counter and following him, waiting to do his every command. I was a young man, stupid, young, and of course, I thought, well, that's interesting. I wonder if that works. I mean, who in their right mind would ever buy that St. Bruno tobacco? I did. It was a crazy thing to do, but I did it. And when I walked down the street and I lit it, the only thing which followed me down the street was a dog. But that was a very good lesson for me. Why did I do that? Why did I freely choose to do a stupid thing? It was because I'd been conditioned. Brainwashed, you might say. And how many times, I'm not going to go fully into this, in politics, why do people vote the way they do? Is it really a rational choice? Or have you also been brainwashed? It's scary. But that's one of the reasons why, to actually understand the mind and get deep into it, you also have to face the problem of brainwashing. What have you been conditioned to expect from deep meditation? It's my job. You've known me for so many years, and hopefully you can trust me by now, that what I'm saying is true. And you don't have to be afraid of anything. When you are free, like a prisoner being released, freedom is much, much more safe and pleasant than being in a prison. What are you being released from? You're being released from the five senses. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touch. And you go into the realm of the mind. The sixth sense, which is a dominant sense. And of course, you all heard that mind is a forerunner of all things. Mind is a chief. That's in the first verses of Dhammapada. The Buddha was always talking about that. But how many of you understand what the mind is? It's great having conversations with psychologists and psychiatrists. And now, it seems, I'm not sure what's happening in Malaysia, but in many places, now meditators have got so many insights into psychology and even psychiatry that many of the local psychologists in Perth, they come up to me and say, we have to go to university to get that permission, that piece of paper, to be able to legally teach. But all the useful stuff we get at your temple. And they're not joking. There's some of these insights which you get about the nature of the mind you want to share with others, and that what you share with others works. I'm going off the subject of nimittas, but I'll go back onto it pretty soon. Now, I do get invited over in Australia to give talks at strange places. One of the talks which I was invited to, I readily agreed to, was a conference on mental health. You know, mental health is a huge problem in our world. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. I think a number of people with depressions and suicide, ADHD, schizophrenia, and all sorts of diseases and illnesses. So I was invited to give a talk by one of the people who come to my temple in Perth to what they called clients of the mental health service. These are the ones, not the psychologists and psychiatrists, they were there but in the back. These were the ones they were treating. And I remember this woman came to see me afterwards and to apologize. So what do you want to apologize for? He said, when I saw you come in to this meeting, you were going to talk to us for an hour. Please excuse the language. She said, I thought, who is this wanker coming to teach us? Wanker is a very rude English word. And that's why she wanted to apologize. And then she said, but over that hour, you made me laugh and cry, both in equal measure. Thank you for all you taught us. And I wanted to say, well, what in particular? Well, many things, but one of those things was the similes of the trees. I love this simile. I'm surprised I haven't mentioned it already. I've lived in forest monasteries all my life as a monk. And when I even look at the forests here in Wisdom Grove, I have noticed that many of the trees are young, and you even have like supports for them to grow up straight, like wires. Please don't always have those supports on there. Please keep the trees natural, bent and crooked and twisted and warped. Because all the trees in the natural forest where I've lived, every one of them is never straight. They got, in the winds or the storms, sometimes branches get ripped off, and in those holes, which once had a branch in it, that's where animals and birds make their homes. And sometimes you see those trees all bent and twisted all over the place. And they become my favorite trees. The ones which are straight, please excuse me, they belong in Singapore. Should I have said that? Real trees in real forests, they're twisted all over the place. And also, you look at their trunk. The trunk is always damaged and scarred. Other things have hit them. That's a natural forest. Check it out. I've never seen a perfect tree in a natural forest. Not one which is straight, all the branches in the right place, and all the leaves nice and green. There's always some are brown or been eaten by bugs. There's always lots of damage on those trees. So people related to that, but then when I said, if you are damaged goods, number one, you belong. Don't ever think there's something wrong with you and you're excluded. You belong. Everybody is damaged goods in this room. including me. Some are more damaged than others. But never think that you need to hide. And number two, the damaged trees, the ones which are all bent and twisted, they're the ones which I like the most. They've got beauty. They're not perfect, but perfection and beauty are two different things. And that touched them. Because many of them, for what happened to them in their early life, abuse, or just bad luck or whatever, they wanted to hide. They weren't the same as everybody else. Because they didn't know how to celebrate difference. And also they didn't understand what beauty really is. So I often tell this to the young people. If you want to have a good relationship, never marry a perfect spouse. They'll drive you crazy. Marry someone who's imperfect, just like you. You'll have much more peace and happiness and joy. So, stories like that touched people. So what's that got to do with things like nimittas? Sometimes our desire for beauty, and to keep it, once you see it, it's so rare, you see this beautiful nimitta, like you want to capture it and put a ball and chain around it so it doesn't go anywhere. That is not the way you deal with reality. The only way to deal with reality is to be friends with it, not to control it or to own it. Personally, that was a huge insight for me in my meditation. I have mentioned this to you before, but I don't know if I emphasized it enough. Sometimes I use the word, I don't know if I stressed it enough, but stress has got no part in meditation, so I use emphasis. Same meaning, but different word. So I do know that why, I ask myself, why do I get sleepy sometimes? When I've already had enough sleep. Why do I wander off when I meditate? There's no purpose to that at all. And I realized that it was because I had a bad relationship to my own mind. When I wanted to watch my mind, and when this monk again, trying to capture me, stop me doing what I want to do. He wants to own me. Have you ever had a partner who's possessive of you? Wants to own you? Afraid that he might just do things that he doesn't agree with or she doesn't agree with? How does that feel? You want to escape. That's what your mind wants to do. You're trying to control it too much. So it wants to escape at the first opportunity. I gave this simile some years ago. Imagine after this retreat is finished, you're over in KL, and you get a call on your mobile phone, one of your friends. Say, are you free this afternoon? So, yeah. Do you want to come for a cup of coffee? There's this lovely coffee shop which I found, and I think you really need to experience this type of coffee which I like. I know you don't usually like that coffee, but I think it'll be good for you. So can you come this afternoon at 3 p.m. and we'll sit in the back. I know you prefer sitting in the front of the coffee shop. I prefer sitting in the back. So we'll sit in the back and we'll have a cup of coffee. And I don't know what you like to eat with that coffee, but I like biscuits, and biscuits are much better for your health than those sweet cakes and stuff which you usually have. And when we're there, I know you always like talking about Buddhism and meditation, but look, that might be okay for you. But politics, this is the real world. I'm in a dangerous situation. We don't know how we're going to survive. So we'll talk about politics. We'll talk about politics for 1 hour, because that's all the time I have. What would you do? No, I don't want to go. So what you do is say, oh yeah, just remembered I've got to go to the dentist this afternoon. I'm terribly sorry, I forgot. Okay, never mind. But you're a Buddhist, you keep 5 precepts, so you ring up the dentist to make an appointment to keep your precepts. But after calling out the dentist, you get another call. This is from another friend. They said, hey, are you free this afternoon? And you say, maybe. And I found this coffee shop. And I know it's a type of coffee you say you really like. I'd never had that before. So it'd be great if you can actually show me exactly where that coffee shop is and I'll go there, I'll pay for everything. And I don't know where you want to sit. No, I usually like sitting in the back. If you like sitting in the front, fine. I'm very happy to sit there with you. And I don't know what you want to eat with your coffee. It doesn't really matter to me, but whatever you like, I'll have. And the reason I'm really calling you is that, you're always talking about this Buddhism business. I know you think I'm a Christian, but I'm really interested in what you're saying and how it's affected you. I'd love to spend time there with you, and you can teach me about meditation and Buddhism and things. How would you respond? Yes. Yeah, I'm going. So you have to call the dentist up again to cancel that appointment. And you go to this shop where you're sitting with a friend, a real friend, who wants to hear what you understand about life, and wants to hear what you think about Buddhism and meditation, and wants to drink the coffee you like, and eat what you want to eat. And you end up spending all afternoon there. Time just flies by, 3-4 hours, with no effort at all. Do you understand the simile? You sit down and say, right, we're going to meditate, mind. And you're going to watch the breath, nothing else, just watch the breath. You're going to do it for 1 hour. Now you know why the mind runs away. Or anything to get away from you, goes to sleep. That's the reason why people can't stay with something as simple as the breath. You haven't convinced your mind. You can stay there if you wish to. When you're friendly to the mind, of course you love doing things together. Each one of you must have some good friends, even just one good friend. And if you have one good friend, you can hang out with them. Or as they say these days, chill out with them for hours. And there's no effort at all. You don't have to struggle to be with them. You just can't get away from them. You don't want to. And that's like how the meditation works. You're friendly towards your breathing, towards things like nimittas, to things like peace. I don't know why people can't be friendly towards them. They're beautiful things to be friends to. And you can chill out together for hours. Time has no meaning when you're having fun. So if you find it difficult to keep with things like the breathing, check your attitude to meditation. Are you trying to get rid of something or try and hold on to something? Or are you just really learning how to be a friend to this moment and not being so too demanding? We did teach some Dhamma. I mentioned this, I think, 3 times already on this retreat. I don't know if you've recognized it, remembered it. On the Metta Sutta. May you be content and easily satisfied, not proud or demanding in nature. That's why I like chanting that. I'm brainwashing you. Be content and easily satisfied. So you haven't got a jhana yet. So what? Practice contentment instead. Be easily satisfied. Instead, don't be proud. Well, I kind of almost got a jhana, but sometimes people say that because they feel that they have to impress other people. Be honest. Be proud and contented, not demanding in nature. Don't demand of your body, right body. We're going to sit here, don't care how long it takes, unless you get a jhana, I'm not moving. Have ever you done that? I did that once when I was 18. I'd only started meditation, and my limit was half an hour, and that was pushing it a bit, usually 20 minutes. No, that was me when I was a young man. And I went to this Vesak ceremony, and there, this Sri Lankan monk, Dr. Sadatissa, he told a story about the Buddha, that before he sat down to meditate, he made the resolution, I will not move from this spot unless I'm fully enlightened or my bones have turned to dust and my blood has all dried up. When I heard that, I was so inspired. You know what's coming. I went back to my room and I put a cushion out there and I sat on it and I made a resolution. I'm not going to, well, the Buddha could do it, I can do it. I was so arrogant. I'm not going to move until my blood dries up and my bones turn to dust or I'm enlightened. And I meant it, that's how stupid I was. I got to 40 minutes, a PB, a personal best. And I was in agony. I only just started learning meditation. I was in agony and I opened my eyes and I was so disappointed. My blood was still running. My bones hadn't turned to dust and I certainly wasn't enlightened. That's what happens, proud and demanding in nature. That is not the way that this meditation works. You're kind to your mind, and then the mind wants to stay with you. It wants to settle down, it wants to be at peace with you, because you're a good friend. And you're not challenging, not a danger to your own mind, with all your will and wanting. And then through that stillness can only come with friendliness. If you hold it tight, things break, or you just get tired. With the stillness, it's like relaxing, being at peace. The water hasn't moved. That's why I like the toys there. They're just relaxing, resting. They haven't moved. They've been much more still than you've been. Me too. There's no effort there at all. It's the kindness, the peace, which comes from gentleness. And that's one of the reasons why I saw somebody reading that book of mine, kindfulness. It's a beautiful word, not mindful, but kindful. Adding that kindness to mindfulness. Because when you're kind to something, it relaxes. I did hear that when I asked what animals are there in Wisdom Park, you said there are some bears. Oh, did you say bears? No bears. Yes, there are. But you said wild pigs? Wild boar, yeah. Because only this year, we've discovered wild boar over in Jhana Grove. And there's about 16 or 17 of them, a whole family. And they're gorgeous, they're so cute. And of course, because it's a Buddhist place, no one is allowed to actually to kill them or drive them away. Hopefully next time you're there you can actually see them. But don't go up and try and pat them. That just scares the mothers. But there's little baby ones. Incredibly cute. And anyhow, as far as I'm concerned, they're welcome. Always be kind to them. And they're kind to them, they never harm you. Be kind, make friends of them. Other people might say, oh no, you've got to get rid of them, they're dangerous. If that happens, if somebody's coming to deal with them, I'll go out to them first of all the night before and say, hey friends, someone's coming tomorrow, so just go and hide over there so you don't get any trouble. Well, that's one of the lovely things, even with snakes. Of course, it's December now and it's cold. It's supposed to be cold in Malaysia, isn't it? It's the cold season? Rainy season. Okay. I know that used to be like in Thailand. You had 3 seasons. They had the hot season, the wet and hot season, and the very hot season. It wasn't a cold season. Not for me anyway. But do the snakes come out this time of the year? Ah. What type of snakes do you have? Pythons and cobras. Excellent. Do you see them?
Yes.
Are you kind to them? You know the story of Ajahn, don't you? It was witnessed. He was meditating in the forest with a few other monks. And then a snake came up to him. It was a king cobra, big one. I'm not sure about why this is, but many snakes are kind of this something kind of spiritual about them. Or sometimes some spirit doctors assume the form of a snake, to test monks out. But anyway, this snake came right up to Ajahn and lifted up its head, just like my hand, in front of my nose. Right in front of his nose, opened its hood. What would you do? I was in northeast Thailand, saw so many snakes. What was really scary for me about the snakes, they could slither along the ground much faster than any of you could run. They're very, very fast. And even when I saw one just swimming across the water, really fast. Those snakes are just amazing. So getting up and running is not an option. So you know what Ajahn Ganha did? He lifted up his hand and patted the cobra on the head, saying in Thai, thank you for visiting me. What do you think that cobra would do? If I was that cobra, and I was being patted on the head by a holy monk like Ajahn Ganha, I wouldn't be able to get enough of it. Come on, carry on. There's no way in the world a snake is going to bite you if he's getting a nice big dose of loving kindness by a holy monk. So it was there for quite a long time. And then the snake decided he bothered Ajahn Ganha enough, so he closed its hood, went down, and then slid to the next monk. No way, no way. If you ever want patting, go back to Ajahn Ganha. But that was like a famous story of Ajahn Ganha, which is true. If you give kindness, loving kindness, to even dangerous animals, they will never harm you. They're sensitive enough. Why do they can't eat a monk. and even biting the monk. What do you want to do that for? The monk is not threatening you. Maybe you could bite the monk who didn't pat it to teach him a lesson, be more kind. But that's like just the mind. When you're kind to it, it stays with you, doesn't threaten you at all. So if you have nimittas coming up, I'm going back on subject. If a nimitta is coming up, please don't forget the kindness. This is the mind. Be kind to it. Thank you, mind, for coming to visit me. If you need to go, fine. I'm not controlling you. I'm not possessing you. I'm not telling you what you have to do and how you have to do it. I'm just so happy you've come to visit me. With that type of attitude, you can see there's no craving, but there's like a kindness and a respect for the mind beginning to show itself to you. So when you start to see nimittas, never forget the kindness and respect. And they stay as long as they need to. That's one of the reasons why, and she was saying earlier, this happens so many times. You see an nimitta coming up, a really nice one. You move towards it and it runs away. You're not respecting it. If it wants to come to you, it will come. You just stay there and be kind and be open. Open the door of your hand and the mango will fall in eventually. And that's one of the problems with nimittas. You get excited and you want. Wanting is the biggest problem in meditation. That's why I often say to meditators, just look at your mind. If you see any wanting at all, just focus on that and let it go. So there's no wanting left. You're just not proud, not demanding, just content and easily satisfied. And then, when the causes are right, you stay long enough, you're very peaceful, beautiful nimittas will come. And the five senses will start to disappear. Even if there is like an ache in the knees or something, you can't feel them. Because the nimittas are just more powerful and more beautiful. And even sounds, they can't really disturb you. And so that's a sign that the five senses have been subdued and these nimittas start to come. I already mentioned one simile of sometimes people see what's called like a sheet nimitta. Not sort of a shape, but like a white sheet or something, or other colours. Please don't worry what colour it is. It's not the case that some colours have more meaning than other colours. Any colour will do. One of these gentlemen, he was a gentleman who, I did mention him briefly, that he remembered he always remembered when he was even a kid how to fly an aircraft. And when I first met him in Perth, he had this terrible, terrible job. He gave it up eventually of being a pest exterminator. It was a really bad livelihood. But nevertheless, he had some qualities from his previous life because he could very easily get these nimittas. But the nimitta colour he got, he said it was black. And that was the first time I've ever heard of anybody getting what you call a black colour nimitta. But I try not to be judgmental. I just ask, give me more description of it. I remember him saying it was the most beautiful black he'd ever seen in his life. Pure, flawless black, shimmering black. It looked like black satin. It was beautiful. And when he started describing it like that, I thought, okay, yeah, that's a nimitta. The actual colour itself is not important. What is important is its texture and depth. Every time it's a real developed nimitta. At first it's not like that, but then it develops into beautiful colours. I just like looking at your shirt, and Buddhist Gem Fellowship shirt there. That's not limited colour. If it's really deep white, the purest white you've ever seen, and flawless. All these colours you see, that's the fun part of nimitta. And if ever this happens to you, you know that that is a nimitta. A blue which you can't see in the world. More blue than blue. More yellow than yellow. And those are typical nimittas. It's a mind object. It hasn't got the flaws of the five senses. So it becomes like a delicious colour. Delicious, gorgeous, beautiful. Sometimes it's hard to find the words. The depth of the colour is important. And its beauty. The reason I say that is the depth of the colour and its beauty is what allows it to stay. It's interesting to look at. It's not at all boring. You're enjoying it. You don't force yourself to keep gazing at it. It kind of holds you by itself. It's just too delightful. And at the same time, you will notice the sense of joy get greater and greater and greater. And that the shape of the nimitta, that's the other thing which people find difficulty with at first. I remember the time when ever started getting deep in meditation, you see a nimitta, but it will be up here somewhere. And I'd go looking at it, and it will go further away. And I realized that's not the way for a nimitta actually to stay with you. You're kind of chasing it, trying to pull it towards you. And eventually, it's a weird simile, but I used whatever similes I could find. I just happened to be shaving my chin one morning, and I'm getting some nice meditation, but I was shaving my chin and I noticed the image in the mirror. I try to hold the mirror perfectly still, but the image in the mirror was still moving. Because I, the one who was watching, was moving. Doesn't matter how rigid I held that mirror, if the one watching was moving, the image was moving. Strange as it might seem, that solved that problem for me. So when a nimitta came in, I made sure that I didn't move. The one who was watching. That's just a metaphor. And then the nimitta became still. I never tried to control the nimitta. I made sure that my mindfulness was still. Does that make any sense to you? But that really helped. And then you were patient enough, the nimitta became still also. And once it becomes still, that's when it starts to grow in its power. It becomes more and more beautiful, more and more powerful. The intensity of the colours starts to increase. And the joy associated with it starts to increase. That's one of the reasons why that ninth stage of anapanasati, being able to experience the citta, it does say as you're breathing in and breathing out, but basically you're not noticing the breath anymore. The citta is much more powerful. It's just the same way when I came here from Bodhinyana Monastery. I came in an aircraft from Australia. But I can't bring the aircraft into Wisdom Park. I left that aircraft over in KLIA. And from there, got vehicles with tyres to drive me all the way to the car park up the road. And then that's where we left the car. And then I came in my shoes. And when you took me to my big suite, thank you for looking after me. And then I can't take my shoes inside the suite. I had to leave my shoes outside and then go in there barefoot. Every one of these vehicles, whether it's an aircraft, whether it's a car, whether it's your shoes or just your bare feet, is used for a different stage of the journey. When you start to see nimittas, the breath has done its job. It's got you there. You don't go back to it yet. Leave it and enjoy the nimitta. And when you're experiencing the nimitta, the job is to make it more brilliant, more beautiful. The colours increase in their depth, which means that you go deeper into it, pulls you in. And the other thing, samadhaham cittang, that is where you get that nimitta to be more and more still. And when you have that stillness and a sampasadana, the sampasadana has an extra meaning, not just joyful, but it has a meaning if you have confidence in it. In all of these ways of dealing with things like the nimittas, with everything in Buddhism, in order to let things be, you have to have that trust, that faith, that confidence in it. When you're confident in it, you realize you don't have to do anything. The more confidence you have, the more you can let it be. And that's where it really starts to grow. I'm going to give another simile now, which might help. The reason I give this simile is because it became well known because this lady in Hong Kong, she was Indian, Anita Burjani. I often mention her. This lady, she had so many cancers inside of her, and then eventually she had an operation. She died on the operating table. But what happened next? She left her body and went to the light. You ever heard that? When people die, they go towards the light. What is that? That's a nimitta. These beautiful lights which appear when your five senses are subdued at death. So if you haven't seen a nimitta yet, you will. And so that's the citta. But she was not a meditator, she was a Catholic. So she described that as going to this incredibly beautiful light. And she said that she let go enough to enter that light, and she thought it was like a union with God, that she was in heaven. Why? Because she wasn't there anymore. This incredible bliss and beauty. And when she came out, what happens after nimittas and jhanas? What's the other part of meditation? I say it always goes together with samatha. Yeah. What was her insight? She said it came out automatically. She realized the cause of her cancer. She was trying so hard in life to please others. Even though she was by all measures a highly successful woman. But nevertheless, in her mind, she was never successful enough. And that trying that extra to please others, she saw with the insight which comes after you enter these deep states of meditation, that was the cause of her cancer. And so when she came out, that was the first thing she said. When she came out from the anesthetic, my cancer is cured. And the doctors thought she was absolutely mad, crazy. She still had so many tumours in her. But she was right. Those tumours started to disappear and vanish. And she, full health, full remission. And one extra interesting part of that story was her GP at the time. In Hong Kong, he was a Westerner. His name was Brian Walker. And as a result of that experience of his patient going through all of these experiences, there's lights and bliss and coming back with deep insight, he decided to do not a career change, but a sea change. He moved away from Hong Kong and he got a nice practice over in Australia, in this country town called Serpentine in West Australia. He is currently my GP. Honestly, life is weird, but anyhow, Dr. Walker is the GP of Ajahn Brahm. Yeah. So, what happens with nimittas. So if one comes up, don't be excited, don't be afraid. Make friends with the nimitta, with kindness. Don't get proud and go and tell all your friends, I got a nimitta, no, you haven't, I got nimitta. But just enjoy it. It's powerful. And you learn so much from them and how to maintain them. You know what mindfulness and kindness has to be. Accept it. Be with it. Don't control it. Don't own it. Not me, not mine, not a self. Just a friend. And they never stay a long time. The longer they stay, the deeper you get. It's enjoyable, but more than that. As I say, those tests which you have at university get tougher and tougher and tougher. As you go into meditation, when you get to the nimittas, they get very tough. You just have to be able to observe, to know, without reacting at all. And those nimittas, they satisfy you so deeply. And of course, the next stage is when you merge into that nimitta. And that becomes the jhana. And that's another talk coming in a venue close to you tomorrow. Thank you all for listening. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Excellent. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk on nimittas.